Hey, what's going on everyone? Another how-to video here, and we're going to talk about buying and selling PCs on a used market site like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, Letgo, what have you. All those sites are great for buying and selling used PCs, PC components, and in this video I'm going to hopefully make you feel a little more comfortable about either buying or selling. I have points for both buyers and sellers on here, and I also have a couple tips for both buyers and sellers to end the video. So if you learned something, that's great. If you don't, maybe it's just a refresher to make you feel a little more comfortable about the process. That's what this video essentially seeks to do. So we're going to start first with sellers and then move on to buyers. Now, full disclosure up front, I have been buying and selling PCs on Craigslist for several years now. I do dabble on eBay every now and then, but I prefer Craigslist because it's personal. I don't recommend you deal online on Craigslist without meeting a person in person. So if you want to ship a product to somebody who lives in a totally different state and just kind of wing it with Craigslist, I don't recommend you do that. There's no buyer or seller protection like there is on eBay. So it's just kind of, luck of the draw, whoever you deal with on the buyer or seller side. So yeah, stick to sites like eBay for that. But Craigslist is more personal. They can test the components. It's all good, fair trade. And I get to meet a lot of cool people who want and share the same passions that I do in the industry. So it's a good experience. I recommend you do it if you want to dabble in this kind of thing. But it's actually how I finance the channel, again, because I was basically buying parts myself with my own money and then cycling that money through inventory, and building with those parts, reviewing those parts, selling those parts, or full-on builds with the parts that I purchased, and then taking that money again, throwing it back into new inventory. And that was especially useful when I didn't have company contacts. Basically, companies now send me pretty much whatever I want, as long as it's not really, really expensive. And I don't have to pay anything for it. Now, I don't sell those components on the market. I find that to be really distasteful and unethical. There's nothing saying that we can't do that, but it's just not a good practice. It just, I don't know, it just casts a really dim light on a channel like this. So we don't do it here. If we do sell anything, it's something that we bought out of our own pocket, and that's pretty much where it stays. So I've got experience in this realm, I guess you should say, and that's why I feel comfortable making this video. I have a whole iRead playlist that's basically littered with Craigslist videos because I feel comfortable enough labeling certain products with certain prices. We'll talk about pricing strategies in a second. So disclaimer out of the way, we're going to start with selling tips, and point one is to price your PC at a slightly higher value than the lowest price at which you'd be willing to part with your build or component. Now, what I mean by that is this: if you have a product, let's say that's worth $500 in your mind, and you wouldn't take a single dime less than $500, you shouldn't just throw it up on Craigslist for $500, because people are going to haggle with you. Look, buyers want to buy the product at the lowest price possible. Sellers want to sell the product at the highest price possible. So you got to find the middle ground. That's what bargaining is for. It's a beautiful thing, and I really don't want you guys to get the wrong impression here, but I'm going to be pretty cutthroat and ruthless on both sides here. Look, the seller should never price something at the lowest price possible. Always ask more than you think your products are worth. Base price, right? So if you have a GTX 1070, let's say, and you see that on eBay and other sites, those are going for between $400 and $500 in a graphics card market where prices are pretty inflated right now, that would make enough sense, at least, to maybe entertain some buyers. It would not make any sense at all to price the card at $300 unless you want like an instant sale, because you could get so much more money out of that card. You want to be as greedy as possible. You're a seller, right? You want to get as much money as possible. That is perfectly normal, okay? It's not a sin to want more money for a product if you can get it from somebody. It's not like you're taking advantage of anybody. The buyer is agreeing out of his or her own free will to purchase the product at that price. You're not manipulating anybody. It's a fair transaction, and that's why the seller should price the component higher than the minimum value that that person will be willing to take for the product, because you might be able to get more money for it. There's nothing wrong with that. The buyer sees value in that price that you've labeled it at, and boom, you've made a few extra bucks. Go buy something else. Contribute to society in some other way. Now, the second tip for sellers is cash is king. Do not trust any buyer who says that he will send you money via PayPal or Western Union, which is the classic Craigslist scam. If you've tried to sell anything on Craigslist, you know the Western Union scam. Don't fall for that garbage. Don't fall for any email that just seems super fishy, out of the ordinary. Only trust people who are willing to meet you in person in a public place and who are willing to pay you in cash. Don't trust checks because they can cancel checks, and don't dabble with, I wouldn't dabble with anything other than cash personally. I wouldn't do cashier's checks, bank notes. I just wouldn't touch it because there are usually ways to get around those. You can cancel checks while they're in the transition phase, right, of being processed. Maybe someone writes you a check and they don't have any money money in their checking account. Then you're stuck paying the bouncing fee. So sticking with real cash, check it in the sunlight if you want, make sure it's real. If it's USD, you guys know what to look for in the big bills. And that's it. You're going to have the peace of mind that you have real cash for your real product, and you don't have any fear of being conned by somebody who doesn't actually have money in his or her account, or by somebody who is literally trying to steal the product from you. Tip 3 for sellers, don't be an asshole. I'm being 100% dead serious about this. Don't be this guy right here, okay? Don't be him. Don't try to bully people into buying your product at whatever you think the price of the product is, or products if you're selling a whole bundle of items. It's just distasteful. You're gonna turn off buyers. You're not gonna make a sale, and if you do, I don't know. I mean, I really hope nobody buys what you're trying to sell them if you're willing to be an asshole. Look, there are plenty of fish in the sea. Buyers have the power of choice. You have more than one product usually on a used market to choose from, and if one seller is being an asshole, move on to the next guy who's going to be more than happy to sell you a product at said price. It's just not worth your time to deal with people who want to give you crap just because they don't agree with either your initial offer or your preference for a PC build. Now moving on to buying tips. We have 3 of those for you guys as well, starting with the first tip: price the parts of a PC build in question individually. So I expect the seller will have a breakdown of every part included in the build. You can use that to your advantage. You can go on the used market elsewhere, eBay, other Craigslist ads, and you can break down those used price offers, just kind of see what the used market is for that component in question, and then you can compare it to the new market for the same products, and then you can do a little delta comparison, right? So if a new PC is selling for $2,500 and someone on the used market is selling it for $2,300, you have to ask yourself if the extra $200 spent on the new build justifies the added peace of mind having a new PC build versus trusting someone who built it, maybe 6 months ago. It's basically a tug of war between spending more money and not having as much risk versus spending less money and having more risk. And the degree of risk there depends ultimately on the builder and just how stressed the components were for however long the PC has been in existence, right? How long it's been built and used. So what I try to do is look at the seller in question, try to see if that person is familiar with PCs in general. I look at the quality of the build, cable management, all that's why I weigh cable management in the Craigslist videos. You guys sometimes harp on me for that, like cable management doesn't determine the price, but for me it does. It determines, for me, the value and the care and the time taken to build the PC in the first place, and that can affect a lot of things. It can affect thermals, it can affect just the overall aesthetic appeal of the build, and if your build looks good, it's probably going to sell. If it looks like trash, and it's probably not going to sell, and that's just because people like things that look pretty. That's a natural thing, and that's why I recommend sellers make their PCs look as good as possible, especially if you have the audacity to ask outrageous prices for your builds on sites like Craigslist. And that basically covers tip 2, assess the quality of the build. Try your best to get as personal and familiar with the seller as possible without getting weird. Try to see if they're just kind of winging these PC builds or if they've been doing them for a long time. That's always a good sign. It's pretty routine at this point. Then you know that they probably did everything right. They have their fan curves and overclocks all adjusted and accounted for, and things aren't running super hot, right, to the point where you're questioning the longevity of the component in question. Now, tip 3 is don't be afraid to lowball. And this is another area where I'm just going to say up front, it's going to sound super weird and super harsh when you hear some of the things I'm going to say here, but it is perfectly fine and acceptable for a buyer to lowball a seller. There's nothing illegal about it. I don't think there's anything ethically wrong about it, because the seller is putting a value on a product and the buyer is putting the same value on the product. Now, the buyer could be trying to rip off the seller, but you know what? The seller could do the same thing. So in my view, both the buyer and the seller have equal power here, because it is, again, in a transaction of sorts, and both the buyer and seller have to agree. The buyer is just trying to maximize his saved money. He's trying to save as much money as possible and still obtain the product. The seller is trying to do the opposite, trying to make as much money and still get rid of the product. So those are the tips I have for both buyers and sellers. Look, you guys might not agree with all of them. You might not agree with any of them, frankly, but these are the ones that I operate by whenever I'm buying or selling something. Deal with cash. Make sure that you do your due diligence, especially if you're a buyer. Meet in a public place. Try to get as familiar with the seller and or buyer as possible, just because you want to minimize the risk. You want to keep that peace of mind elevated, because trust me, there's nothing worse than getting scammed out of something you spent a lot of money on, and it's very easy to do. It's very easy to be scammed online, especially if you're not actually meeting the person, you're just receiving something via mail. We have this video right here to prove that, right, with eBay. But with eBay, you have virus protection. With Craigslist, you don't. So be especially careful there. Look, don't be afraid to do it. You know, if you're of age and you think that you can trust yourself and your own instincts and your own investigation processes, then just start small, work your way up, get familiar with the market, with used PCs, used components, and I guarantee you'll have a fun time. All right, Greg, time to wrap. If you guys like this video, let us know by giving this one a thumbs up. We appreciate a thumbs down. For the opposite, click that red subscribe button if you haven't already. Stay tuned for more content like this. This is Science Studio. Thanks for learning with us.